You're recording now.
All right, here we go. Good evening, everyone. It is 5:02 p.m. I will call the October 8th Richland County Executive and Finance Standing Committee to order. Roll call, please, Mr. Kalish.
Carol. Manning.
Here.
Gill.
Here.
Glassburner. Kurt.
Here.
Frank. Williamson.
Here.
And Cooey.
Here.
We have 6 present. We have a phone.
6 of 8 of the standing committee, and we have it as it is right now. Verification, open meetings law compliance.
Yes, Mr. Chair, the meeting is properly noticed.
Agenda approval, next item. 25-point agenda, one item to, we're gonna move item 16 up with 7B with the administrative report. We will be moving 16 in with item 7B. Otherwise, the agenda as presented. Mr. Manning, seconded by Mr. Cooey. Further discussion on the agenda? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. Item 6, public comment. Public comment, number 6.
You want number 5?
Oh, yeah, minutes. Minutes from September 10th. Any questions, changes from our September 10th meeting? If no concerns, I'll declare them approved as presented. Now, item 6, public comments. Elaine?
Am I going to be allowed to stay in closed door for this?
No, your question was answered at the last meeting.
And why is that?
You were told 3 times now. I'm not gonna bring
I
it up
want
again.
you to answer it because I don't think he gave a good answer. There's,
Mr. Andy Phillips gave you the answer in front of the public, what the answer was. That's my choice.
well, there's a statute here. It says other than that. It says exclusion of members. No duly elected or appointed member of a governmental body may be excluded from any meeting of such body unless the rules of governmental body provide to the contrary. No member of the body may be excluded from any meeting of a subunit of that governmental body. Can you explain that to me?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
It says unless the rules of said body provide for that. Our rules do provide for that.
And I
That's
need
what
that.
Mr. Phillips
I mean,
told you at
So
the
you
last
don't
meeting.
want to work together as a board on issues that come up?
Yeah, we do.
I don't think we are.
That's your opinion and you're entitled to that. And that's part of the reason you're not allowed in closed sessions, in my opinion.
Because I don't work with you well, or what is it?
No, it's part of the liability of the county.
It is? Because I'm not a follower?
Mr. Chair, this is beyond the scope
Yeah.
of public comment.
Okay, thank you
Yeah.
very much.
And the other thing I want to bring up, County Board Rule 4.05, mobile device use during meetings is not allowed. Cell phones are not allowed during the county board meeting.
Well, I use it because this thing sometimes
I'm
doesn't
just
work.
telling you
We've
what
already
our
talked
rules are.
about that.
Moving on to reports, 7A, Veteran Service Officer, quarterly report.
Good evening. In the attachments in the packet that was sent out, are my quarterly reports of the numbers that have been in the office. If anyone had any questions about that, I'll be glad to answer. And besides that, there's really nothing to update except for that the office will be closed next week due to conference, our fall conference. If anybody has any questions? Yes.
I was just wondering why there were so many more people on September 6th. There's like 62 and 71 walk-ins compared to way less than that.
If you look at last year's September, I can provide that as well. That's fair. That was the week of fair. And we document everybody that we gave filters, anybody that we gave any type of advice, anybody that scheduled an appointment with us, followed up with us. We keep a roster of that.
Thank you.
I'd like to say I thought you made a great appearance on it. The fair did a good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And thanks to those that stopped out. That was really nice. So,
Anybody with any other questions? Good,
thank
all right.
you.
Moving on to 7B, Administrator's Report, Human Resources Update 2025 Budget Review.
Okay, so you're going to notice some movement in the administration area. We are going to be swapping around some offices to maximize the space we have and ensure privacy and confidentiality which is not conducive right now in the way that our offices are set up. So I will be transitioning into what is now the county clerk's office. Derek will be moving down to the end of the hall in the smaller office, which is now where Larry, finance director, sits. And then Larry and Tammy Wheelock will be transitioning over to where the administration office currently is. And that will be our new finance department. Which is exciting. It's an exciting step forward. We will also be transitioning the mail boxes and the mail service over to that area, just because it is a little bit disruptive, especially when people come in to get a marriage license or they're asking questions about voting or different things. And then you've got the loud, noisy mail machine. So it will reduce the day-to-day traffic flow, hopefully, for some of those other things that are going on, so that the clerk's office can provide the statutorily required services that they do in a little more quiet and private and efficient manner. So just so that you're aware, that's what's kind of happening. There are no dollars associated with this move, as we're, obviously going to utilize desks and other things that we have, plus some from the campus. And yeah, we'll just try to make it the most efficient, effective space that we can. And I will now have an office door that actually closes, which will be very exciting. So we're all looking forward to that. I did, per the campus reconfiguration committee meeting the other night, I was directed to send an email out to all department heads, soliciting any items that they may need for their offices, such as desks, chairs, filing cabinets, etc. So I have started getting some of those emails back. So Randy and I will be working on getting those items collected and figuring out move dates and all of that stuff, because we don't just have to coordinate with our maintenance department, but MIS has to be involved in that as well. So we'll just do it little bits at a time until we get everything sort of taken care of. Additionally, we've had an HR generalist now for about 7 months, and they've also had an HR generalist out at Pine Valley that was filled with Angela Wall. Angela Wall has decided to stay as our Pine Valley administrator, which is amazing and exciting news, because she's just doing such a great job out there. And so Justin Siemens is going to transition out to Pine Valley. He is going to still provide all of the county-wide recruitment and data tracking, but then he will assist Angela in day-to-day operations out at Pine Valley. Simply because it's a smaller scale for him to learn and grow and to maximize his time, because he does a lot of the recruitment, really focuses around Pine Valley. It's one of our largest departments. So he's going to be transitioning out there, and then I will backfill the HR generalist position in administration, hopefully with a different skill set. So if Justin can handle the recruiting retention piece and the data analytics piece, we're going to look for somebody that can be more focused on payroll support. So we have a backup for Tammy Hendrickson. Also policy development, because we have so many policies that need to be rewritten. And then some of the day-to-day HR operations. So I believe that's a more effective and efficient way to utilize the resources we have, do more with less. So we're going to move forward with that. So I just wanted you all to be aware that that change was coming as well. Any questions, comments on that information?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
you said we'd see this. Where does this reflect in what you booked? I thought you mentioned when we were looking at the budget, or was this just simply a
No.
report?
No, this is just a report. There's no
Okay.
budgetary impact on this at all.
Okay.
This is just a
Sorry,
report
I
on
misunderstood.
what's going on and keeping you all in the loop on happenings.
Got it. Thank you.
If no questions, we'll go to the budget review.
Okay, so, and this is where 16 will come in. So let's talk about 16 before we jump into the budget, because you will see some movement in the budget numbers, and it is because of item number 16, which is increasing 35-hour-a-week schedules to 40-hour-a-week schedules. So after our last meeting, a staff approached me and said, hey, Candace, was there any discussion on those of us who are 35 hours moving to 40 hours in the budget talks this year? And I said, oh, we kind of had talked about that at some point when I first started, and I think it all just fell off the radar. So, we should have those discussions. So Larry and I asked for an accounting of who was still at 35 hours a week and who was at 40 hours a week, across the county. And we needed to understand the history of all of those. Some were backed off to 35 hours to save money. Others have just always historically been 35-hour-a-week offices. And so I wanted to meet with each department that had 35-hour-a-week staff. And I wanted to speak with them about the history. Had they always been 35 hours? Had it been a reduction attempt, a savings attempt? What was it? And then what's the volume of your work? Do you feel like you need the 40 hours? Or are you functioning adequately at 35 hours? And so after doing that, we kind of came up with a staggered approach to getting those offices who feel as though they should be 40-hour-a-week offices all in line by hopefully taking 2 offices this year and then 3 smaller offices next year, and then bringing everyone back up to that fully functional 40 hours per week. So land conservation was the first one. It's really odd because half of their staff is full-time and half of them are 35 hours a week. So the 2 newest staff, which is an office support staff and our zoning administrator, are 2,080 hours. But the director of the office and the conservation technicians were only 35 hours. So not really a functional way to operate an office. So my first suggestion would be to make that office a fully 40-hour per week office, and they do have the volume of work to do. Boy, do they ever. They've been extremely busy. And they're rewriting, the zoning ordinances, they're looking into those, and we've just had a lot of compliance issues as of late. So I do think it makes sense. My recommendation to you is to bring them up to 40 hours per week. And then the other office that seems to make the most sense right now is also the Register of Deeds. We have a Register of Deeds right now office who is that's a mandated office. That's a statutorily required service, and they're only operating at 35 hours per week. Now, I remember when we passed the elected official salaries, that was a big part of the discussion, that was going to be a 40-hour per week position now. That salary would mean that would be a 40-hour per week office. Well, then if we don't move the assistant up, the deputy, then we have a 35-hour-a-week employee with a 40-hour-a-week office. So the other offices, definitely have volume to do that. But when looking at cost, this is the easiest way to mitigate that cost and just step into it. So the overall impact will be about $33,000 this year. And then next year it would be similar annually. So that's my recommendation to you. That's what we have in the budget. If, however, you do not like that recommendation, you do not feel like we should bring those offices up to 40 hours per week, we can easily back that out. But again, if we're trying to get everybody to fully functional, 40 hours a week is fully functional. And that would promote then equal and access to all services, 40 hours per week that the county offers. Any thoughts, questions, comments on that before we hop into the budget piece?
Mr. Carroll.
Yeah, so can we just get a rough feel for, because this is kind of changing direction a little bit. So can we get a feel for how many more positions potentially might go to 40?
Okay, so in the land conservation department, we have Jen Schrapp, who is currently full-time, but Corey, Derek, and Kathy were only 35 hours per week. So those 3 will come up to full-time. Katrina was already full-time.
Right.
And then in the Register of Deeds office, it would be Michelle, who is the deputy, that would be going to full-time. After that, next year, then it would be Jennifer Lau and Jenny Marking down in Register and Probate,
Right.
Register and Probate,
Yep.
yeah. They are at 35 hours per week. And then it would be, Karen and Hugo. Well, Hugo wouldn't go 40, but Karen would go 40 hours per week, as she is at 35 hours per week currently as well. I did speak with Adam about extension, and right now he's comfortable with where they are at, and he said we would at some point revisit that. So.
Okay, thanks.
So that's really, it's not that many people, but it does have a fiscal impact. And so I thought it was appropriate to have that discussion, make you aware. And then again, if you don't feel like those are necessary, we can easily back those out of the numbers that you have in the budget now. Any other questions, concerns?
Well, the only reason that zoning was different is because they weren't in the same group before. You know,
Okay.
zoning, that's why that's different.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they were, ever since Mark and I have been on, they've never been. I think it was, I don't know why they were always 35.
Well, we've moved it up and down so much since I've been on the
Yeah.
board. I went from 40 to 35, but I never quite understood, you know, it was a savings, but how much savings it actually was.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't.
Well, especially when they're a revenue generating office.
That's part of the reason why that office was 40 hours a week. Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
the zoning is one of the few revenue generators, so.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so with that then, if there are no additional questions, oh, Larry, you're just in the nick of time. I just explained our 40-hour a week, discussions and recommendations. Then we can kind of go into the preliminary budget. You're not going to see any significant changes other than the fact that the sheriff's, court security officer, court security deputy is now in this budget, as well as the additional monies, for the full-time employees. So where you will see the increases really are in the total expenditures, and the levy total. Other than that, there are no changes from what was presented to you before. So Larry's passing out.
Change, just a change that we had for the, you saw?
Yep. The total cost difference for the deputy. And this is just, the one-time costs and figuring in health insurance, all of those pieces are outlined here. And if you'll notice, the items at the bottom are not things that will come immediately. They are intending to hold over a squad right now, an older squad. But eventually that will be another squad that will be added to our rotation. That is why that cost is relevant. $30,000 to upfit and equip a new squad, radio taser, and then uniform and gun allowance, for the first year. And that's where that additional 79,000 comes in. And then the annual costs that aren't in the budget, this was insurance, gas, an estimate of 10,000. So that is the total, and that is that $36,000 difference that we talked about before. So that leaves us with a total net levy of 6,717,452. So any questions on the budget presentation? We did do a little bit of changing too, because it was pointed out after our last budget presentation that people who were colorblind could not read the pie charts. And so we changed it to bar graphs so that it was more easily illustrated, and that even if you were colorblind, you could differentiate between the numbers. So that is why you see the change to the bar graphs instead of the pie chart. if you have no questions or concerns, then that wraps it up for, oh, well, actually, I should give the other update. I'm sure many of you saw the email, but, after the emails that I sent out to our representatives, and legislators and to WCA, I am happy to announce that we were able to get the prohibitive language that would force us to relieve or release the UW systems from any potential legal liability for the campus closures and commit that we waive those. That language is being removed from the grant. So we got a win there, thanks to our partners, thanks to those who listen and advocate for us at WCA and at the legislative level. We greatly appreciate that. And in this case, it allows us now to apply for the $2 million with no strings attached. The new grant application should be out shortly, and I will apply for it then immediately. So, a big win for us.
You're gonna want us to do a resolution, approve this resolution to move it on to full county board, the budget?
If there are no other, if there are no other questions or concerns about the budget, ask that you approve it to be moved on.
Just a question on zoning. How did it go down $111,000 off the levy? If I'm reading this right? It's minus
Where-
111,000.
Where are you looking?
The gross levy,
Which-
preliminary gross levy. These numbers here.
Yeah, that is 99,000 to negative 12.
Yeah.
13.
How did that happen?
And
Personnel went down and their grants went up.
So in the zoning department, there's a zoning administrator.
Correct.
Which they're always for.
there used to be two other staff, a GIS staff
You know?
and a office support staff. They're now sharing an office support staff between zoning and land conservation, and there is no GIS staff. And there's no assistant zoning administrator either.
Get that, but you still have, some of that had to stay. I find it hard to believe 120,000. And as far as the grants, you know, them grants, they can use a percentage of that for, in the past, we used a percentage of that to cover those other two, to cover their wages. It's just.
Some of that was okay and some of that was not okay.
Exactly.
Larry, do you have
So
the
that's where
breakdown?
I'm kind of confused how this
Okay,
went this way.
well, Larry's pulling the line by line breakdown. I have the general breakdown, but. Find it, Larry?
And then the second question on the general, it was 4.7 last year, 4.9 this year.
Okay, so here's the zoning numbers. So last year, the total budget was 249,360.85. This year, the total budget is $136,331.95. So we saw a decrease in sanitary permit fees. Land use permits stayed the same. Zoning permits went up. Farmland preservation certificate gained $4,500 that they didn't have last year. Soil testing fees remained stagnant. Sanitary maintenance filing fees went down $2,000. Land division fees went up about $1,000. Non-metallic mining fees were steady at $20,000. Mapping and database fees, $300. That was an increase. County address signage, $3,000. So that right there went to the good, almost $13,000 from last year. So rather than taking $98,000 worth of levy, which was what happened the year before, this year, they're actually giving money to the levy because of the way that they're operating. We also have, in the septic realm, failing septic systems, the land records fees were down to $20,000, and then the land information grant is $75,000, which is steady.
Yeah.
So no net levy.
Some went land. Okay,
That,
does that make sense?
Well, it makes more sense. Let's leave it there.
okay, what was your other question, Mark?
Well, I just look at the general and it's negative 4 million, and now it's negative 4,900,000, it's 4,700,000. There's 172,000 gain there, figures,
Which slide are you looking at?
the same one, the girls.
The last one right for the total.
Candace, it's this one you're looking at, Mark, on the screen.
Yep,
Make it a little bigger, I just don't know how.
Well, I'm just trying to, I'm trying to read it.
just trying to understand what that is.
The negative 5142096, is that what you're looking at?
Negative 4741,191.56, and this year it's negative 4914,07992.
Yeah,
That's the general fund?
yeah, it's the general fund. Yep,
That actually has revenues in it in excess of.
expenditures.
That's why it's a negative. It actually contributes, reduces the levy of the other.
So last year, we gained another 172,000.
Correct.
Mainly that came from, the reduction that levy came from the reduction of the debt portion of the levy.
We paid off that one small debt,
Short term.
that short term.
Mr. Carroll.
I was wondering, was talk earlier about thinking about bringing GIS back in-house. I wondered if current budget would support that if we decide to in the next fiscal year, as opposed to paying MSA for all the GIS work.
So the grants as they're written right now, still continue to pay MSA for contracted work. We have a job description that is being put together through the wage study process. And there will be a wage that will go with that, obviously. And then if we were to decide to, do we have wiggle room somewhere where we could pull dollars? Yes. Is it put in this budget? No. It is not put in this budget at this point, Barb.
And you did hit it on the head. The grants pay for that GIS work now. If we choose to hire a position,
They
they will
won't.
not
Right.
cover
They
the
won't.
position.
They changed that before they would have, now they will not. And that's a change this year, correct?
Yes.
Whether there's a grant that pays for it or not, we still need to decide if we want to do it.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. Either way, we need to decide. And honestly, there's some opportunity to discuss some partnerships on that front as well. And we are exploring those.
One more question. Institutional costs.
Yep.
So we're staying flat, and where are we at today in
Okay.
institutional?
Probably speak to
We're,
that.
we're doing really well.
Yeah.
Even if you'd like to
Yeah,
touch on that,
if you-
sure.
But currently, we're doing well to be within budget. In fact, I think we're a little below, but obviously that's really hard to predict. I know that in children's, they did have an age out of one expensive placement, which really helped because typically children's has been going through the budget faster than the adult placement. And so that is more on track than this year. It's lower. So overall, it looks really good.
The only reason why I bring that up is because every year in March, we pull money out of the general fund to cover the shortfall, the deficiency report.
That has happened.
No,
In all the years that I've been on this board, we've done that, so.
Yep.
Hopefully, we don't do that this year, but that's the only reason why I asked.
Well,
that,
so
because
currently-
we started that, I mean, it had nothing in it, and that's how we cleaned it up every year. And now we've built it to this, my only question, and it's hard to foresee, right? You have no way of foreseeing that.
No, but I do have our percent utilized. We're through August right now, and in Fund 54, we're only 45% utilized. And in Fund 44, we're 61% utilized.
So what does, those two funds together equal this?
Yes, and so together we are, I mean, even with the 61, that's below what we would have to be.
And the other piece to that is that Trish and I have spoken about, you know, with the transition to Tyler, we're changing the way that the general ledger works, and we're going to be able to basically make it so that not everything at the end of every year rolls back into the general fund. And these areas would be one of those funds that we would want to retain a balance. We want to keep a rolling balance in there, you know, and set a limit. At some point, that would be a discussion for this committee, is what would that limit look like? So that we can continue to build those funds, so that in a bad year, we have excess funds to draw from without having to come in from the general levy and do that. You know, create kind of a policy on what is the maximum amount that can be retained in that line item for utilization. And then once it hits above that point, then those monies would roll back into the general fund. But that would give us a built-in cushion at all times. And I think that may be a wiser way to manage some of those funds where we know year over year over year, we have that risk of that large swing. And so that is an item that we eventually will bring forward for discussion and modification. Because one bad year can really affect the budget.
Any other questions on the few budget changes? If not, we should go to the adoption of the resolution. It is in your packet. Derek, all numbers are correct as presented there?
They are correct. So it has the proposed county budget for 2025. Noting the county board meeting is October 29th. So you'll recall the meetings for October and December are off schedule, just because that's the way that they have been. And we now have a meeting in November with your new set of board rules you adopted. We previously were dark in November because we didn't have a meeting, but now we do. So just FYI, you'll hear more about that at one point. But anyway, that's one of the notice on there. The resolution also indicates that we're crediting $1.5 million for Richland County sales tax, which Larry and I both feel confident that that number is realistic, and not overly realistic, but realistic. And, you know, we don't want to mess that number up. And then also then your levy then is the $10,341,005.79, which would include the debt service of what was in your packet there, the 3.5 million, I believe it is, and some change. Your base levy of 6,767,000. I try to remember the number, but it's 6.7, and then the other items that are reported. So that is your overall total levy. This resolution should look very similar to what many of you have probably seen before, but that's the resolution.
I would entertain a motion to approve this resolution, move it on to full county board for our later meeting in October.
So moved.
Who was that? Mr. Gill? Mr. Gill, seconded by Mr. Carroll. Any further discussions on the resolution? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that is done. All right, number 8, discussion, possible action, ordinance adopting and enacting a new code of ordinances for Richland County, number 8.
Hey Derek, this was your baby.
Okay, so as many of you know, we started the arduous process of taking all of our code of ordinances, having them recodified into an actual real life code of ordinances. So for those of you that have been around a while, we started this process almost 2.5 years ago now, and we've finally completed that process. So I just received this on Thursday. This is the finished codified code of ordinances. So without going into all the details, what essentially this is all of those ginormous binders that many of you have seen in the office, right? The board, the proceeding books have all 3 of them have been reduced to this. So this will take up substantially less space, but more importantly, all of those ordinances were reviewed by the applicable department. So Mike, myself, Well, a bunch of us, Candace, we all sat down, took all the ordinances, we scanned every one of those books. Shout out to Miranda, she had to scan a ton of documents, scanned them all to Unicode, now known as Civic Plus. They changed it while we were in the process. They received all the ordinances. Mike, Candace, and I split them up between departments. Every ordinance that was in that book was distributed to the departments for review. They reviewed those ordinances. Updates were made as proposed, all being reviewed by Attorney Wingo. The other service was they did a gender neutralization service just to clean these up and get us in a little more modern version of the ordinances that we have. So what they have done is, folks can look at these when we're done. This will be available online. They don't release it online until you guys approve it, obviously, because then it lives on, this thing called the internet. But nonetheless, these are the same ordinances we had. They have been reviewed by Attorney Wendell, by Civic Plus's legal staff, and are now what we will use as code of ordinances. So when you ask for an ordinance, we no longer have to dig through 3 books that weigh a ton, and there's an actual searchable function to this. It'll be on the county's website at some point, Barbara. It'll be hosted elsewhere, but a link will be available on the county's website. So if anyone wants to search any ordinance, there are a million ways to search them, and you will be able to do that. So they will send us 3 copies a year, I believe, but as updates are made and amended, we did pay for the full complete subscription service that we will send them the amendments. They will amend them on a quarterly basis, and then they reprint this annually. But nonetheless, you will see those updates being made to any code of ordinances in real time to the county's website. So this may look like it's a very little work, but this is like years literally in the making. So this is one of the first like strategic planning things that we had, was to have a real code of ordinances. So the ordinance you have before you was provided by Unicode, Civic Plus, and basically can let Attorney Wendell sum it up better than me, but pretty much says the adoption of this makes this the official code of ordinances, which we are governed as a governing body by.
Yes.
Correct? Anything else to answer?
Just that they're not exactly the same ordinances. There were, if the law had changed such that it made an ordinance provision illegal, we would have taken that out. Certain statutory references were outdated. Those were all updated. There were certain language changes that were made, just formatting or procedurally. So for example, we added kind of a catch-all provision for ordinance violations. So if it's not written into the ordinance what the penalty should be for a first offense, it's up to $100. Second offense, it's $250. And then we can dovetail and make some more functional changes along those lines. But this resets us to the modern era, brings us to searchable. If you'll recall, those of us who were here 2.5 years ago, when I spoke in favor of this, it was because I had never seen one of our ordinances. I've since seen them, but despite being an attorney who practiced in the area and actually someone who negotiated a case with the DA for a lesser charge of an ordinance violation, I had never actually seen the ordinance that my client ended up pleading to. So it was arduous. I have read our entire code front to back. That was not fun, but it's the sort of thing that once we do this, it's maintenance and it's spot fixes. We're not in the same position as other organizations I'm aware of where our entire code is worthless. We have something really good as a foundation to bring us forward into the future.
And there will be no more track, the 12 different amendments to zoning ordinance 75-5 and all the 10 amendments that have been passed throughout its inception. So it's all in one place, all updated, all real time.
Sounds great. Mr. Carroll.
Did you say updates will be done quarterly or real time?
No, they will. So every time you have an ordinance update, I will email it to them the day after the board meeting. They will then update it online I think they do have quarterly updates with the online version. So it will say on their current as of whatever date. And then when we send them the new ones, they'll get it ready and then publish it on their hosting website, I believe quarterly. And then they print us a new book annually.
And that was my other question. It's not literally on the county's website, there's a link to their website.
It's hosted, right, Barb?
No,
Oh, yeah.
they host it on theirs and it is just a link to theirs.
Right, correct, right.
So all the searchability and all the functionalities on there.
Correct, and you can, they have 1,000,001 search options. And you can compare other counties too, which is actually, you'll see, there's so much stuff you can do, I won't tell you about.
Very
I am too.
Yes, that's awesome.
Good. Any other questions to Derek or Attorney Wendell in regards to the ordinances? If not. Yeah,
This has never been done before, you guys, so since 1850 or 1851, it's kind of a big deal.
congratulations.
Celebration, but yeah, I'll second.
Was that Mr. Cooey? Oh, Mr. Carroll and Mrs. Glassbrenner. Further discussion? Not all those in favor of moving this on to the full county board, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? All right. That one's done. Number 9. Discussion, possible action, approval of public comment form. That's number 9.
All right, so the form that you have before you is, in other municipalities, public comment's a little more structured of a process. And I know, public comment wasn't always on our agendas, but it's now since been on most of the agendas. So in order to streamline that public comment process and just give everyone an opportunity to provide a public comment, whether in person or not, I propose that we use some sort of public comment form with, again, many municipalities have this. I know I've even gone to school district meetings where if you want to have a public comment, there's a piece of paper that's maybe less wordy than this, but nonetheless, a piece of paper that you can fill out to give to, the chairperson of the meeting, whoever's running the meeting. So this way, when they get to public comment section, information about what the public wants to say is there. And just, I would hope, streamlines the process. You all don't have to use something like this, but I thought, would be maybe nice to have something like this. So we can just catch people's comments, be transparent, be open, but then have a structured process so we all can manage that, or at least just handle it a little more structured than we are. So what I have on the screen before you is I've made just a simple Word document for this, which could be posted on the county's website. People could print that off and bring it with them, or I can have copies of this printed like I would with the agenda. I also made a fillable one too. You can't really see it on here, but there's a fillable one, so if people want to do a fillable PDF. I did note up on here that the public comment item is reserved for members of the public who would like to address the county board. I won't read this word for word, but individuals requesting to speak or address the county board during the meeting shall do so under the public comment agenda item. Speakers shall be required to fill out this county board public comment form and present it along with any material handouts or information to the county board, to the county clerk prior to the county board meeting. If they're unable to attend, they can email it to the county clerk. I asked that it be given to me noon the day before the county board meeting, so we could have it available for members of the board to review. But basically just says, as we have before, speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Obviously, county board can't take action on items unless they're posted on the agenda. And then just basic decorum things here. They address the presiding officer rather than the individual. And then just we collect some information from them, and the notation here that under the Wisconsin Public Records Act, the information submitted in this form may be released to the public because we're creating a public document. So it's up to you guys whether you'd like to use something like this or not, but in order to just enable efficiencies in operations and transparency, I propose the use of this form.
Here, just a clarifying question. Are you required when someone speaks in public comment to record their name and their address?
I don't know if there's a requirement to do that.
Okay.
But I know a lot of governing, I shouldn't say a lot. It's not uncommon for a governing body to, have them state their name and address so that they're a member of the community.
Okay.
I don't know, Mike, Attorney Wendell, is there
I
a
didn't know if it
requirement?
was statute.
Yeah, public comment is one of those things. There's no statutory requirement, so it's whatever you guys decide you think is appropriate.
Our county board rules do say that anybody doing public comment must provide their name and address prior to beginning the.
That's why it's on that form.
Yep. Any other questions?
Mr. Fair.
It does say in our board rules that all comments must be germane to an item on the agenda. In the form here, it talks about either agenda or non-agenda items.
That's in our board rules, you said?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay, so we can edit that one. then, okay.
Mr. Chair, this is specifically for county board meetings, is that correct? Not for the other committee meetings?
I think we could modify this form to just be a general, a public comment form. And
Well,
I
my reason for asking that is because those rules are specific, I believe, to county board meetings. It wouldn't necessarily apply to committee meetings.
Yeah, wasn't sure the approach if we wanted to do it for just
The
county
rules do
board.
say they apply to committee meetings too.
Okay,
Applies to all periods of public comment at county board and committee.
okay.
So my thought maybe was that you guys take a look at this and it's not like we have to do it tonight, but maybe look at the form. If there's any edits, additions, corrections you'd like to see on there, then we can entertain that and bring it back next month. But I just wanted to put something out there. So to get your feedback and to see how you'd like to proceed with that, if at all.
So do you propose to have these forms then available at every meeting for someone to grab and fill out?
My thought was that they could be posted online and people could retrieve them, right, or as a PDF online, or
They can, but we have to meet ADA, and I don't think, that means we have to provide them in other languages, and we also have to provide them for illiterate, and I don't know that I can do that, that's my concern with this. In order to meet ADA, that's gonna be a challenge.
so is it something?
If you're gonna say that they have to do the form to speak, which is what I'm reading, right?
That was the other question I had, is I didn't know if you folks would want anything like this, if you want this to be a requirement, which is, I think I posed a question to you, Attorney, but I think like, well, since I'm saying required, I mean, how do we go about doing that? So just throwing this out there for first review, I guess.
I think having rules of public comment would be a good idea. Because that way people come into the meeting knowing what the expectations are. No one can say, oh, they're changing it at the last minute, or, they're only restricting me to 3 minutes. That's not a rule. A form with the additional considerations, I mean, we could do it on a case-by-case basis. So if we're approached by somebody who says, I can't read, or they speak a language other than English, or can't see, we would have to find a way to generate a form for them if it were required.
What do you think, Steve? Go ahead, Mr. Gill.
I guess my question is, what's the rationale behind this change? Why is this based on so many people were here that we suspended our public comment period, or why we want to make a change?
Well, part of it is my thought is when I'm trying to record minutes, you'll recall at the public hearing we had, I was trying to get people's names just to reflect in minutes and what have you for the record, basically. And I only had 5 of the 25 actually say their names, so you're gonna notice those minutes are a little sparse because I didn't get that information. And I guess in my spare time, because I'm that person, I review other council meetings from other communities, and a public comment form is not something that's unheard of. So I was just looking to streamline or just to install some sort of process for public comment. And of course that follows the form, right? Or something to just clarify that process. And again, have transparency and accountability and all of those things built into a form. So we can just effectively handle that somewhat systematically.
Go ahead.
I remember correctly, I think we had updated those not that long ago, and it was partially because we had some instances where there were a lot of public members that wanted to speak, and it was really just kind of we didn't have a set standard for how are we going to handle this when we have, say, 30 people show up, they all want to speak for a long period of time. We want to allow public comment, we also have to conduct business. So we then, I think, kind of added or basically made more specific rules on what the public comment would look like. But then to Derek's point, we never really took that further on, okay, so how do we handle this? Now, I don't know if this form is the way we want to go, but I think what he's doing is based specifically on our rules, which if we have them in our rules, then we should be following them consistently in some manner or at least notifying the public that these are our expectations for public comment.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
In my prior county, and I don't know if it was statutorily required, and it's Minnesota, so it doesn't matter. Anyway, but we had a sign-in sheet. And if anyone wanted to address the board, they had to sign in. It was their name, address, I think name and address, and an email if they wanted to provide it. So that it was there for the record then, and we could say so-and-so addressed in public comment, and it was all there, and that you were ensuring that it was an actual citizen of the county that was making public comment.
Yeah, and I actually utilized that, it was last term, I believe, with Health and Human Services. There were a few meetings where there was a lot of controversy. And so we had a large number of people, and I wound up doing that. And then I required that they would have their name on that before the start of public comment, because then I took the form and called people by name. Or if they, anyways, it just really helped. It helped to track, it helped to keep, so that would be I guess, a simpler version of it. You could certainly have some set of rules at the top of that or expectations.
And this could be, in my opinion, could be an option if somebody cannot make the meeting and they want to get it in, like Derek says, noon before the day of the meeting.
So maybe make this one if you can't attend the meeting, and a sign-in sheet if you are there. I mean, I think that would sound reasonable.
Mr. Manning.
And whatever way we go, Andrew brought up that it may be 30 people or whatever. I definitely would like to see some time limit on any public people come in if they can't make their comment in 2 minutes. So I would like to see a time limit on it.
It's 3 minutes.
It's 3 minutes. Our rules are 3 minutes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
2 points. One, just don't make it mandatory to fill this out.
Yeah.
That's, have it available for them. Sometimes, I frequently find it helpful to put my thoughts in writing before I start talking. A lot of the over explanation that you've been subjected to over the years has been a result of an inability to do that ahead of time. But one of the procedural advantages, I think, to having a form like this is if there's, a board meeting with a number of topics that that people may want to speak on, it might be helpful to be able to organize, these 3 people want to speak on this issue, this person wants to speak on this issue. So we're not bouncing back and forth, and the board can hear, a block of concerns about, so you can call, Bob wants to speak to this issue, it will also be spoken on by John and Mary and et cetera. So I think the form is a good idea. It's a good option. And I think just by not having it mandatory, we avoid the concerns about potential legal liability.
Go ahead.
And I agree with him. So that would mean, I think that we would change the language a little bit in the top of this to make it not mandatory. Although I do think that having expectations of that for written comment would be fine, since that's prior. But anyways, and then I still think that the sign-in sheet at a meeting was a really good idea. You can even put agenda item on that. I'm trying to remember, I think I had that on my sign-in form where they can write down the agenda item that they're speaking to, so that you do a quick glance.
I like that idea, because then you can group them together, like Mike said, because if they start at the beginning of the meeting, when we have our public comment, talk about something down at 23, by the time you get to it, you won't even remember what they had said. But Mr. Gill.
Yeah, I like the sign-in sheet too. I just think that we need to really publicize that so people aren't surprised that there's this new thing that they're not aware of, and now they're not able to, they've come here, now they can't speak because they didn't sign this.
Well, like Mike said, we won't make it mandatory.
No, and the sign-in sheet would then not be, I mean, I guess I see what you're saying. You typically want to give it to the chair of the meeting before public comment, but that would allow for people who hadn't prepared written things in advance to still just sign in and speak.
Yep.
There wasn't any issue as far as I know with it, and it did go a lot more smoothly with that.
Mr. Cooey, do you have public comment on school board?
I'm just waiting for everybody else.
On school board, is there public comment on school board?
So they come in and it's a separate sheet. It's a small piece of paper they sign, and that way then the chair can see, I got 4 or 5 here, and then you can go down the list and manage it. To me, that's the most efficient way to do it. It's just real simple. you got something to say, right here's the avenue, you fill this piece of paper out, that's it. I mean, it's just basically saying your name and
Name and,
The
go
other
ahead.
advantages to it is that you're able to actually call on who signed up, and then you don't have, you know, people jumping in multiple times, like they have their opportunity and then you're
Yeah.
moving on, so there's not as much back
Good.
and forth sometimes.
So do you think the direction we want to go is just have them develop something for next month and?
For like a sign-in.
Yeah, we can modify it, bring some
Yeah.
more.
That
I,
we can
I
use
think
them.
that's what I'm in favor of, so we can keep moving, but. And if, go ahead, Mr. Gill.
It's like the idea that they can do public comment in advance of the meeting and we get that information. They don't have to come here, but because I think it's great that we're getting feedback from our communities.
Good.
Yep.
Yeah, and if you've got anything you want to have Derek add, let him know. Mr. Cooley.
the only fear was not doing it present and doing it ahead of time. Is someone's gotta manage that, right? You gotta make sure that everybody gets that. You know, on the school board, it's done. You wanna speak, you're gonna come and speak, right? So that's the only thing I would kind of promote. I mean, if it's important enough to you, you're gonna make the time to get there. I realize sometimes people can't make, but I get that, but someone's gotta manage that. So if we're gonna do this in every meeting, someone's gonna have to look ahead of time and make sure that it just could be a challenge to manage, that's all. I'm not trying to deter people from public comment, but typically public comment is you came to the meeting and you commented, right? So it's just I just think it could be a challenge to manage is all.
Derek, you got enough information for now?
Yeah, I will proceed with, I will, yeah, I think I'll work with the renewal on Candace and we can carve out a new form that, or a sign-in sheet, whatever we want to call it, that will hopefully meet the needs, and I'll just bring it back next month for the review. That's fine with you.
Perfect. All right, number 10, discussion of possible action, resolution approving the purchase and implementation of Microsoft Office 365.
Right, so if you look in your package, you've seen the quotes for Office 365. We've been talking about going to this for a long time. I sat in a meeting today and found out we have very limited time to get this off the ground. Pine Valley is switching softwares that will be fully implemented December 15th, and they are requiring that they will need email addresses for all of their CNAs and nurses to log into their new software. So we need this implemented before that. We will be taxed to get this done, but we will come through, we'll make it happen. But to do that, I need to get your approval on the purchase because it is over $10,000. We have elected to have Luz Allen Hamilton, who has assisted us in ventures in the past to help us with our implementation and our security hardening of Office 365. It is a complex process, and I think that it would benefit the county greatly to have that expertise that in-house staff doesn't have that. And we don't want to leave things for chance. There's a specialty niche that we need to use the experts for, and this is one of them. We have their statement of work, and you have a copy of that. So there are two parts to what I'm requesting. One is the licensing and one is the implementation. But because the pot of money is one pot of money, I put them all together in one resolution. So the total project cost would be $112,060.66. The total annual cost will be $69,435.66. Not all of that is tax levy. A lot of it is covered by Pine Valley, cover their own licensing. There are several departments at HHS that will cover their own. Child support covers their own. There are several departments that have lines that cover these expenses. Some of them are tax levy, so it's kind of a split. But we do need to get the project moving in order to meet the December 15th deadline. The initial costs, as this wasn't available to department heads for their budget for 24, is to be covered by ARPA and then previously borrowed funds that are available. So we're not using tax levy to do the initial implementation.
And just if I may, that is part of the CIP money that we found that wasn't utilized. Barb had reserved some of hers for this purpose specifically, so now that will be using up the remainder of the CIP that was intended for this project. And then HHS had ARPA funds that were to be utilized, and they offered up those funds also for the implementation.
They have to be used by the end of the year or else give them back.
And this was one of those projects that they submitted to the state for approval because they changed the parameters of how that money could be expended, and this was an approved use.
Mr. Carroll.
So in terms of the board and our iPads, our laptops or whatever, if we stay on iPads and are we still gonna be doing, how's that interface gonna work? Are we gonna be on multi-factor authorization also?
Office, yeah. Office 365 will require 2 MFA, and yes, it will be on your iPads, or if you choose to, on the next agenda item, make a change, it will be either way. But Office 365 will be full implementation. The bonus that gives you is you'll be able to do your Word, your Excel, those documents on an iPad, if you so choose.
Other questions for Barb from our group? Something that we've got the money, gotta be done, and it needs to be done sooner than later. Motion by Mr. Turk, seconded by Mr. Manning. Further discussion on the expenditures for Office 365 from anyone? If not, let's vote. All those in favor of purchasing the Office 365 licensing and installation and everything that goes with it, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay. Next item. Barb again. Discussion possible action purchase of laptops for county board supervisors.
So at the last meeting, it was requested that I bring back a proposal for laptops because there are several supervisors who find it challenging to work from an iPad, which I can certainly appreciate. The background is they've had the iPad since 2015. The county board supervisor role has definitely evolved. And with Office 365 coming into play, there is a possibility of doing more, and you may want a laptop. If laptops are chosen, there are other considerations that we don't have with the iPads. There was a recent email that went around that unfortunately was opened by several people, not just board members, but several people. And because if it's open on an iPad, we can contain it. If you're on a laptop, I can't protect people from themselves. I can only do what I can do. So if we choose to go to iPads or laptops from the iPads, that's cool. But we will require you to do the know before training. It's all staff is required to do it. Supervisors are not. But once you go to a laptop, the connection to the network is greater and the risk is greater. So I do need to request that that be done. Then there's also further security that we have to take. So there are costs with all of those pieces. I've broken them down on the cover sheet so that it's all very clear. We would want the laptops in bags. We need, of course, give you mice. So total cost, and I did it not to exceed, and the not to exceed is for 21. Do I think that 21 supervisors will want to go to laptops? Probably not. But that is what the not to exceed is up to 21 of each item. So the most that this project would cost if all 21 supervisors chose to go to laptops from their iPads would be $22,927.06. And that covers your know before training for the 32-month contract that's left. If you have questions,
Mr. Turk, yes.
So those of us who are taking Know Before training now are getting it free or,
No,
okay?
you aren't getting them anymore if you haven't noticed. We
Oh,
pulled you
no, I
out.
just got enrolled again.
Did you get it? You might have, if you participated, we left you in, the ones who were not doing it, we were getting charged. And it seemed to not be,
Wondered. And does it present challenges for you to manage a mix of laptops and iPads, or are
we,
there challenges either way?
it'll be a challenge, but we think we've come to a solution where what you see on your PDF manager, it's a server that we have that hosts those documents. And I want to be careful how much I talk about this, but we have found a way that we would be able to give you those documents on a laptop that are identical to the ones that are given on a laptop or an iPad. So you'd be getting the exact same data. It's no change in what you're getting.
Would that eliminate some of the sync issues we have with PDF Expert?
It's gonna be a different piece of software, but the same documents, the same data.
I'm talking about the situation like where we try to open it on the iPad and it's not syncing right and.
If it's the software causing that, yes.
Okay.
I thought some of the issue with the iPads was that the way that we see our folders and things is different than what you guys can see on the computer. And not to mention, there's also more searchable capabilities on the computer. Is that, am I misunderstanding?
You can search with your iPad.
Yes, I have done that, but it's very clunky.
And it is. There also is, and I'm not sure that all of you are aware, there is a search tool for our website where you can search through everything that's on our website, which the nice thing is everything that's on your iPads is on the website. That is way lighter. And it runs off of, it's a Chrome plugin, and it goes out and it searches very well. That's a nice feature that we use.
I guess my point is with going to the Microsoft, is that going to change where then there isn't going to be a difference between an iPad and a laptop? Because currently we can't open up some of the spreadsheets, we can't open up things. We also can't see all the file folders in the same way that is being seen on a computer. And so is that going to take that away? Or
I want to be careful when I answer that because I don't want, I as a county employee have a set of folders. You as a county supervisor see a different set of folders than I do through my working documents. I don't foresee that changing. Now, certainly you as supervisors have the right to make that change, but I would be very challenged to open up the entire server.
I don't think that's what I'm asking.
That, okay.
I don't.
So
I don't
then
think
you're
I
not
can
gonna see the same
server.
things.
Part of our issue has been, it's very difficult when we're having to go back through multiple folders to try to find a specific thing, because if you do search, it's very clunky, it's hard to narrow it down to what exactly folder is this PDF even pulling from, and it's just very difficult to track any kind of information. And so the hope, at least for me, was that if it were on a laptop, that maybe it would be a little bit less.
You'd be using Windows search features instead of Apple search features. So yeah, I can see where that would be easier for you to navigate.
Okay.
Mr. Carroll.
I will second that. I've had it's been challenging to try to look things up and remember what month or what year something came up. Just the file structure in our iPads, it makes that difficult. And I'm hoping if we switch to laptops, there's some way that, not just a search function, but also a way to organize files and folders that is maybe by department or in some other way.
Well, we'd have to have that discussion. I think that what you're leading to is what's coming with the new word process with the new website will help with that, because the way that you are presented data will change once we implement that. But if file organization is a very personal thing, there is no right way, there is no wrong, there is a wrong way, I suppose. I'll say that no file organization. Jason and I are both IT professionals. He can absolutely not find anything that I save. It doesn't mean that I'm doing it wrong. It means that I think very differently than he does when I organize my files. I am not sure that, I'm happy to reorganize things, what does best for you, because you are the users of these files. And I'm happy to work with you on that and come to a different organization. But we need to work on that together. I don't know that we'll be changing the structure.
Well, that's what I'm really trying to get to specifics here, because I'm not a tech person, and I'm not understanding the difficulties that we're facing on the iPad. How much of that is a function of the iPad, and how much is just a function of how it's structured and it's not going to change for a laptop? Because that's a very important thing to find out, because why would we spend $22,000 on laptops if it's not going to change some of those functionalities, is why I'm asking. So I don't know if there's a way to like trial what things look like on a laptop, you know,
We could set up a couple.
And then also you're saying that the Microsoft might change some of the issues that we're having. So then in that case, I'm thinking, well, then maybe we should be waiting until we see what that looks like. I don't know what other committee members think, but.
I know there is a difference between Apple search and what Barb said.
Right.
Apple search to me has never been much good.
I mean, I personally would love to play around with what it would look like as a supervisor on a laptop before I say, oh, this is gonna be the best thing is just to go and get a bunch of laptops.
Yeah.
I agree with that. And it sounds like we do have a tight deadline to go get the 365 degree, but there's no tight deadline on this. So I would like the idea of a couple of trial.
And you're welcome to.
One of the trials. I hate these things.
Sure. So what we can do is the laptops that we have available are not new or speedy. Take that into effect. Send me an email, let me know who would be interested, and we can set up a couple to try. If that works.
Perfect.
My only question is, we don't have to go to a laptop if we don't want.
We can manage both if that's the committee's wishes.
What do you do? I'm not changing away from that. Anybody else need to go ahead?
What are we gonna do with Manny?
He's got those files. Works pretty good.
Mr. Carroll? Yeah, sir.
Utilize them for the fair. The judges there need them. We use them throughout departments. They use them for translation with our clients that, we have some that are American Sign Language. We have a few clients that we definitely use iPads for. We have some that are non-English as a primary, and we use those for that. And there are some that take them out into the field. EMS does that and does their reports on them. So there are uses.
Good question.
I think we should just wait until we can.
Yeah, agreed. We'll, she'll get those that want to try it.
Okay.
We'll get you a couple. See what you think. Report back next month if she gets them to you when she has time.
Trust me.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Counting board.
I need to do it a few at a time though, because I don't have 21 laptops available. So I'm happy to do that. Okay. If we can take turns.
Microsoft function on
This will go to county board on October 29th. I will contact Booz Allen on October 30th. And hopefully we're gonna aim for December 1st.
But yeah, you may not have a report for us till about noon.
these two are the ones that I volunteered. I'm happy to hear what they think.
Good. Any other questions on that? Otherwise, we will move to number 12. Nothing on that. Number 12, discussion, possible action on termination of EMS medical billing contract. 12, Mr. Mike.
Hello. So 12 and 13 do coincide a little bit, and I'll give you a little bit of background on 12 the best that I can, because this is superbly complex, and I'm going to try and keep it to under an hour. January of this year, we transitioned billing companies from our old EMS billing service. The reason being is there were calls not being billed. We weren't seeing returns on our reimbursements because we bill out for an ambulance trip. Okay, so let's say our base ambulance rate is $1,000 for an ALS transport. Typically with Medicare and Medicaid, on average, we'll see about $300 return on that. So we don't call them fees for service, we call them reimbursements because we're only reimbursing a partial percent. So the issue that we were having was we were not seeing the revenues in which we were anticipated. And we're continually giving that billing company opportunity after opportunity to, oh, we see the problem now, we'll fix it, don't you worry about it, everything's fine. And it put EMS in quite a predicament. And that was part of the reason why we had this whole discussion about the roof on the ambulance building was our revenues weren't keeping up to where they were anticipated to be and where they should have been based on our call volume and our payer mix. So January 19th of this year, we transitioned to a new billing service. So I myself, I had started May 28th. When I was looking in the beginning of August at our July monthly cash report, I noticed that our bank account was not looking like it should have been looking. Doing some digging on that item, I found that saw a dramatic decrease in our reimbursements starting in about April, moving forward through July, where we only saw about $12,000 in revenue and anticipated we should be about $35,000 to $45,000 a month. So doing some research in the website of our billing service, I found that there were some major discrepancies. Communicated with the billing service on that. We've had a multitude of meetings on that. Turns out there were, what we've been able to find so far is there was 142 calls for service in which just never got billed. And this was a one-off situation. They explained that would never be expected to happen, but will certainly never happen again. Don't you worry about it. And it still doesn't make up for the amount of lost revenue that is present, but it does kind of make up a bit of a chunk. There's other moving parts to this, but I don't want to get too far into detail on that. So we had a meeting with the current billing company, with our client service representative, as well as the CEO of the billing service. One of the things they came up with is like, oh, well, look what we found you now that you brought this to our attention. And my point was, okay, well, when mom and dad are standing in the doorway, the room's going to be pretty dang clean. What does this look like a month from now? Why was there no communication from your office to us that we had a 22% drop in revenue over a 14-day period 1 month? Like there was no back and forth, and they just reaffirmed that it'll never happen again, and you need to basically log into our site every day, and you need to do tracking to make sure we're doing our part, and there's really no mutual work there happening. So at that point, I'd already been looking at the company that's agenda item 13, just for the EMS software service that they do provide. So through that conversation, I understood that they also provided a billing service too, which kind of opened up this discussion. So in explaining all this to the Joint Ambulance Committee, and I'll save the next company for the next item, we believe it's best moving forward that we offer our 60-day notice of termination contract to the current billing company effective no later than November 19th of this year. At that time, prior to that time, we'd enter into a contract with a new billing service to make sure that we don't have a lapse in billing coverage. And again, the new billing service will make sense once we get into that agenda item. But this is kind of hate to say it, but a time critical piece as well. Because to ramp up with a new billing service, we have a 6 to 8 week credentialing period in which we need to transition all of our credentials for Medicare, Medicaid, private insurance, that type of thing, over to the new service. And once you give notification to the current billing service that, hey, we're not going to renew our contract, you really shouldn't anticipate them doing a lot of hard work for you and billing your calls. That's the issue with the previous company that we had, and we're still not seeing all of our revenues from 2022 to 2023 that we were hoping to see at this point because they just refused to continue to work with us. So the point being is that once that credentialing is complete with the new company, there's about a 2 week to 4 week period there that they spend all of their time finding all of the calls from this year that have not been billed by the current billing company and pulling those before we stop sending bills to the current billing company. It's a weird moving piece. Otherwise, if we don't get this contract signed in a shorter amount of time, we could see up to a 30 to 60 day lapse in billing and completely miss out on some expiring bills for service that are out right now that we would no longer be able to bill based on the date of service. So this is a big thing. We can't afford to have issues with our billing. As you guys know, we don't operate on levy dollars or county tax dollars. Our operating money comes from our reimbursements for service as well as our contract revenues. So that's where we're at with that. I don't really want to take the risk of going through the whole motion again of, well, they'll do better next month and things will be fine here. And we did that for a few years. It didn't work. This billing company's not doing their job. I think we need to step into one that I feel pretty confident in. There's more parts to that piece as well. I can address it in the next item or explain now, whatever the committee would prefer.
I think we go with this, see what their thoughts are, as far as what you guys are. They're not doing their job, I think it really.
So
my thoughts.
Looks like you already went to the joint ambulance committee with us.
That's correct.
I'm good with you going ahead with that.
So the 142 calls that did not get billed, are we still gonna be reimbursed for that or a percentage of that, or where is that?
It depends on if they have now billed for them after identifying them, number one, and number two, the date of service as compared to if that's a Medicare, Medicaid, private insurance patient. In what it's called a TFL, so it's a limitation on when you can actually bill that call to the insurance company.
Yeah.
That's what the date of service was.
Probably too late to bill.
And some of them might be and some might not be. And that's the whole point with getting ramped up quickly with the new service so they can go back through our entire year and pull out what is billable and begin that immediately.
We have recourse then if they haven't billed per, we have a contract with them
Yeah.
to bill, right, correct?
So technically per the contract, and it's a somewhat gray line at best. We thought better than to pursue this option. We believe they breached their contract. We believe they're in this breach. We kept our end of the deal. We have paid what we have owed to them, and we suffered great financial harm due to their inaction. But instead of pursuing that route with an immediate termination, we said, well, this contract is up in the beginning of January. This is a perfect time to transition. We have that about 3 months to get it done. But we need to do it in that 3-month buffer.
Mr. Carroll.
Two questions. If we're going with someone else, do we want to look at our agreement with them and see if we have a better recourse for damages and whatnot?
I will be having conversations
Okay.
with Director Jessen regarding any lost revenues that we've experienced thus far.
And is it worth trying to pursue with the current bosses? Are we doing that?
Those would be conversations I have initially with Director Jessen, and then depending on
Okay.
which avenue we choose to pursue. But that'd be a separate agenda item down the line.
Similar to certain files on an iPad, that's not easy information to search, unfortunately. There is a multitude of explanation of benefits and piles of paperwork for each case that you have to figure out if it did go through the service, if it got returned. That's not something that's easily, give us some money for these. It's going to be a lot of digging and a lot of searching.
We would have to stand to recover sufficient money to make it worth pursuing action.
Anybody else with thoughts? What do we need to do here? Just move this on to full county board if we're in favor of it here? Or?
So specifically for number 12, we're looking to move that on to county board to give 60-day notice prior to November 19th of this year.
I'll make the motion. Mr. Cooley, seconded by Mr. Manning. Any further discussion? Mr. Kalish will get the correct wording from Mr. Jens. If we all know over. Basically, yeah, termination of existing contract, moving on to full county board. Anybody questions, concerns? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, now, number 13.
All right, so number 13. So, Mr. Clerk, are you able to pull up the,
I can in just a second. Let me finish
Thank
taking my
you.
notes here.
maybe I'll give you the exact page number. So what item 13 is, you're looking at a proposed contract for a company called Unified Solutions.
There's the contract.
Yep, and there should be like the last 2 to 3 pages of that contract. So the contract language is very similar to which is with the other one. The difference between Unified Solutions and EMSMC. So currently with EMSMC, we pay a 7.5% to them for every dollar that's recuperated. So whatever our total revenue is for that month, they send us invoice for 7.5%, and that's just for the service of billing. So again, Unified Solutions I stumbled into because of their EMS software that they offer. This is a single sign-on option for our staff that encompasses all scheduling, staffing, rig checks, online learning management system, inventory, payroll tracking, all of the things that we have different software services for, including a computer-aided dispatch module. Has it included with the billing services at that same rate of 7.5%. So not only is this the exact same percent that we are paying right now for the billing services we are receiving, we're anticipated to save about $6,750 a year just in software costs, eliminating 3 software platforms we currently utilize because it's all incorporated into one. The nice part about this as well is that they will interface with our current software that we're using through the credentialing phase. So we'll have some time because all of the software they have, they write it, they do it. So we actually design the software in our own sandbox is what they call it over a couple of months time to make sure it's all working for us. So we would deploy our new software to all of our staff. January 1st would be our deployment to go live date with it, but we'd already been billing with this company after we complete our credentialing process. So it's a 2-stage phase in. Again, I do see a good potential cost savings with this. In the grand scheme of things, is $6,700 a lot of money? No, but it's something, and we have a lot of needs. So if that can be adjusted towards another one of those needs, I think that's super important. And as you can see, those are all the modules that actually come with at that 7.5%. I was able to negotiate with the company that all setup fees, all change fees, all migration fees are all waived. And we're locked into the 7.5% rate for up to 24 months before we see any adjustments on additional software costs, that type of thing. So this would be a 1-year contract that we'd be entering into with Unified Solutions. I'm excited for the opportunity to be with Unified. They actually, after a multitude of conversations, I kind of explained to them, I said, you don't have to try and sell me the stuff anymore. I really like it. Would you be willing to perform a third-party audit of our current billing, what our payership rates are, that type of thing? Their numbers that they brought back, what we should anticipate monthly, are higher than what we're anticipated from our current company now. Another big thing with Unified Solutions is you meet weekly with their billing rep. So you have a weekly phone conference with the billing representative to discuss all your billing from the prior week. Because the patient care reporting software is actually built into their software suite, they offer same-day billing as well. So we complete a call, patient signs, we upload the documents, they could be billing that same. Typically, 70% of calls are billed same day, 30% are billed within 3 days.
Yes, sir.
And just one thing that the committee should be aware of, there is a subtle but important difference in the contract with this proposed contract in that Unified Solutions tie themselves to the standard for reasonable collection efforts that is set by CMS, the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare. So our previous contracts just kind of said, we will bill on your behalf. This contract says explicitly, we will undertake the efforts that are required by the federal government for Medicare, Medicaid billing, anything where there's going to be an administrative code or law attached to it, there's going to be case law. So just as a hypothetical, if there were some kind of action taken against one of the previous companies, neither of them have set themselves to that standard. And so one of the elements that I would have to prove would be that the efforts that they undertook were not sufficient to meet the terms of the contract. Here, it's not a judgment call. It's not subjective. There are going to be statutory definitions for all of the things that they had to do in order to show that they have appropriately billed or attempted to bill. So I think that that's a really, really important change given the experience that we've had with the last two billing companies.
Mr. Manning.
Yeah, have you checked with the other counties, what they're doing or who they're working with?
Yep, so I've checked with a few different agencies, and the company we're currently with, which is EMSMC, has bought up a vast majority, if not all, of the local, smaller kind of, mom and pop shop billing companies that are available. So nationally speaking, we don't have a lot of options to choose from, and typically a larger service with a higher call volume, let's say you have a service that is, making over about 5,000 to 10,000 runs a year. When you're dropping, a couple hundred calls here and there in the grand scheme, it doesn't affect them. And is that money kind of off the bottom line? Yes, but we're a very unique setup as to how where our revenue actually comes from, and we don't have an operating budget, a fully funded operating budget January 1st. So some of the people I've spoken to that are currently using the same billing company we are they having the same issues? Maybe, but it doesn't affect them the same way it affects us.
Have you talked to anybody using that specific?
So I've talked to 3 agencies now that use that, and I didn't track them down based on reference from Unified Solutions. I did a lot of Google searching through agendas and minutes through different municipalities to find, motion to approve Unified Solutions and reach out to those folks. I've heard nothing but phenomenal things, and EMS is not perfect, billing is not perfect, the software is not perfect. I don't care what platform you're using, but the biggest thing I heard about Unified is they're communicative and they work with you and they want to solve the problems. The other thing with Unified too is, so our current billing company also owns a collections company. And so they get 7.5% of any revenues collected on the front of the billing. If non-Medicare, non-Medicaid patients go to their collections, they get 10 to 12%. And they really want you to use their collections agency, they tend to get more. Unified does not own collections, so they pursue reimbursement on the front end a lot harder than EMSMC does. EMSMC will send 1 to 2 statements in pursuit of payment. Unified has no limitation on how many statements or phone calls they'll make without being a collections company to try and collect as much as possible.
You need a motion on that?
So the thing with this is that the sooner we can get this contract signed, the sooner we can start credentialing, and the credentialing is a big piece. Because if we do hit that 8 week period on credentialing, we're pushing ourselves kind of in a predicament, especially with giving notice to the current company. Obviously we have rules of file and process. My hope is to sign this hopefully next Wednesday after county board. Now understanding county board is not until the end of the month. That puts us in a terribly tight position. The only reason I be up to the chair here, I ask of this is because this is no additional cost. And we're getting more for the same amount we're spending. Do we feel this needs to go to county board to enter into this contract to begin the credentialing process? If so, that's fine. I'm just concerned that we'll end up having a lapse in revenues.
If you hold off on your 60-day notice.
Well, we can't hold off on the 60-day notice because the contract will automatically renew November 19th. This is being able to start the credentialing so we don't have that lapse. Because the second we give notice of that 60 days identified in the contract, EMSMC is going to completely stop billing for us as anticipated. And talking with Unified Solutions, they kind of claim that their specialty is picking up services in the midst of contract disputes and that type of thing that are having issues with their billing companies and helping with that transition. So there's been hours and hours of this discussed with them and how does this look like? And we do potentially have a liability with EMSMC that if they decide to stop billing for us November 19th for that 60 days and don't, they could bill us the 7.5% revenues collected. So we could potentially have about a $4,200 liability that they could ask us for by doing it this way, but that's just how these billing things go. Our old billing company is still looking for percentage payments from us. So it's just how the game works. It's silly. It's not productive. But to get the credentialing process going with the new company is going to be mission critical.
Mr. Wendell.
So we repealed all the previous rules governing approval limits and sets, and I don't believe we have a new procurement policy set out. So I am aware of no authority that would preclude this simply being an approval by Administrator Pesh.
Anybody else with different thoughts on that?
Between this committee's approval and the JAC's approval, and then the fact that there's no budgetary impact. Obviously, I defer to how the committee wants to move forward with it, but
And you're speaking of the action to terminate the contract.
to enter the new contract.
Onto the new contract.
That's correct.
The terminate one, are you saying you'd have time for that one to go to?
Absolutely. Yep, because that just, notice does not have to go until November 19th.
But, yeah. Thoughts, Mr. Carroll?
So, Mr. Patch, you're good with this?
I am, I've been party to some of this discussion. I've spoken with the chair of the JAC committee, and this is a need.
Okay,
It's been about 2.5 months of discovering this and going through all this line by line and getting it all put together.
And attempting to rectify with the prior billing company, and it's just not,
And really, the thought of changing billing companies twice in 2 years is just the last thing that we want to go through right now with everything else, but it has to happen. We can't accept losing money like that.
Are you wanting a motion from us?
Mr. Gill, you got a question?
I support going with unified.
Yeah, I would entertain a motion so we can keep moving.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Gill, seconded by Ingrid Glassbrenner. Anybody with any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of going ahead with the new billing service through S. Your press, take care of the signing, whatever has to happen, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? All right.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate it.
14, discussion, possible action, performance review process for county administrator. Was that Mr. Kirk going to take care of that?
we had discussed this at a previous meeting and was looking for feedback and got just some general feedback, but firmed up what the process was gonna be. So I wanted to come back and make sure we were all on board with what's going to happen, because we need to get this moving. For those who've been part of previous county administrator evaluations, when we started having an administrator, an annual performance evaluation is part of the process. The previous board chair tasked me as vice chair at that time with coordinating that, and I had experience doing performance evaluations. So we put together a form that was circulated to all county board members and all department heads, and then a self-assessment version of the form to the county administrator themselves. All that feedback came to me. I compiled it, brought it back to the committee, and we went through it in closed session to perform our evaluation. The feedback I've gotten on that process has been the form was rather lengthy. So was questions if we could try to shorten it down a little bit, and that could certainly be done. A few fewer questions. There were spaces for people to enter comments, and so all of those come to the committee for evaluation. What we've typically done is have it distributed by email to all the department heads and all board members and ask them to route it back to me. I compile it all into one report to share with the committee.
And that's this committee, or does it go to?
It is this committee. This committee is charged with supervising the county administrator. And then this committee could determine if you want to do a version to give to the whole board or how you want to do the report on it.
I thought it went well the last time that we did it. I didn't have any problem with it. You guys were there for that.
If that's what you'd like, then I'll get moving on an abbreviated version of because it was 3 or 4 pages before. It was a lot to do,
I
so.
think as long as there's space for people to put in comments.
Oh,
it
yes,
works.
absolutely. I think that's an essential part of it.
Perfect.
Okay, I'll move forward.
All right.
I would focus on the areas that we're trying to, you know what I mean, so like smart objectives and all that stuff. I go through all these different reviews. It seems like we change ours about every 3 years. Yeah, you go through and there's certain things, right? Like, so there's the business side of the work that Candace does, and then there's the personnel side. And you try to break it up 60-40 or whatever. I think ours is, so 60% of ours is based on our business, right? And the 40% is based on how our people skills are, things like that. It kind of condenses it a little bit. There's always room for comments, whatever. I mean, one thing is to get it to get a lot of input out of it, don't make it longer.
Right.
You know what I mean? Get to the point, right? What are we looking at? What do we want Candace? What do we think is a good administrator, right? And what qualities should they be focused on? So that's their business side, and then the personnel side, or the personal growth, or whatever you want to call it. Then you break that down into 4 or 5 things. And I would just try to keep it condensed as much as possible and get way.
And the last couple times we did an evaluation, we had far better return from department heads than we did from board members.
Yeah.
So when it goes out, we'll encourage board members to participate and get their thoughts in.
Good. Thank you, Dave. 15, discussion, possible action, approval of Richland County farm lease agreement. Who's got this one?
Well, so as we all know, there is land up behind the campus. And so, as far as we can tell, there has never been a signed lease.
It's my understanding that the people that are currently renting the land, started renting the land after they either purchased the land from their family or acquired, or inherited the land, what have you, but, this land, and from my understanding, has been farmed since prior to the 70s, and, this arrangement previously existed with the UW colleges because it was, the proceeds from rent were given to the campus for the rental, but as we all know, the campus now belongs in its entirety to Richland County. So the landowner actually reached out to me and said, hey, who do we write our rent check to? And I'm like, oh, right. Like, do you have a copy of the lease that you had? And there wasn't one to be found. So I can't speak what happened between the renter and the UW colleges, but our response was to draft a lease. So they had a lease for the land. So this is what the draft you have.
So we asked Attorney Wendell to draft a lease, and so that is what there is before you. So this is really, thoughts, suggestions. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Are you concerned with anything in it?
Remove Vernon County.
So, full disclosure, I don't remember doing this. I'm glad that I provided it, but yes, so what I did is I was reading through this and I was like, anyway. So issue representing multiple municipalities is that I had a perfectly workable municipal farm lease to base this off of. Unsurprisingly, it was Vernon County's. There has been no lease, and so this is something that I witnessed a committee argue for 2.5 hours over all the wording on. We can make it as simple or as complex as you care to. This would be kind of everything that I would want in a farm lease. And then even with this, there are still decisions that need to be made. So do we allow manure spreading? Do we require soil testing? Do they need to comply with the NRCS 590 nutrient management plan, which I haven't the foggiest idea of what that is, but I'm sure someone in this room does. Or do we say, this goes from now till now, you pay us this and you can farm the property?
Look at the one Pine Valley has.
That's my.
Yeah.
We already have one out of Pine Valley, so what is that one?
I haven't seen it for a few years, but it goes out for bids. I think Carrie was involved a couple times, Gary and Carrie. It's always been on behind has gotten a bid, but eventually this probably should go out for bid as well, but.
On behind land surrounds it and Schmitz has got the other half.
Yep.
I know Rick has made comments before that he thought it's not fair what little he's paying. What is he paying per acre? Has that been brought down?
$3,500.
Yeah, it wasn't per acre. It was just a flat amount.
$3,500.
$3,500.
Around 7. When I spoke to him, what's that?
How many acres?
When I spoke to him, I think it's around $75 an acre. I think. I don't know what the tillable is. But no, and they never asked. When I contacted him the first time, probably a year ago, or when things were going south, and I knew he was running the ground, because I said, hey, where's your check going? And he said at one time he thought it was going to the gymnasium to help with stuff there, but it was going to campus.
That was, me personally, whatever we're doing at the county, we need to just That's a,
Well, they both should be the same in my opinion.
Is there a committee that,
it's come full county board when we.
so it didn't go to land or whatever?
No. Mr. Carroll, comment?
Yeah, I've not seen what lease thing we have at the Pine Valley, but for this one, I would like us to consider having our land conservation people look to see if there's any, make sure that we're doing everything we can to be a good steward of the land. Now, there's a few things in here, but there could be some more stuff we want to consider. So I hope we can have it run through there and see if there's anything else we want to modify.
Well, that doesn't mean we don't look at Pine Valley as possible.
All the land we rent should be the same.
Yeah.
Is it the same contract or whatever?
I assume it's, year by year at Pine Valley.
Mike, I think Pine Valley is 2 or.
It's a 3-year lease.
3 years.
We just actually renewed it, I think, a year and a half ago. That one.
Send both those things to the land conservation to look at?
I did not forward this land
The
conservation.
Pine Valley one.
I don't believe anyone did.
No.
No, I'm saying.
Yes,
Whatever you direct us to do.
Yeah.
Yes, do it.
okay.
There you go, Steve.
Make sure they look at both of them.
So you'd like both this and Pine Valley, both? I'm just asking for clarification here, both leases, this and Pine Valley, well, and we'll modify this lease after Pine Valley's, but to land conservation. Okay,
Eventually, they'll all, like Mark's saying, they should.
land
they should be the
lease,
same.
I'm just gonna say general land lease.
Yeah.
To-
Gary, we've never rented any of the, I'll say, open ground at the campus, correct? Like parking area where they make the hay off of or mow or, I'm just curious.
Fairgrounds?
Or yeah, fairgrounds, sorry.
It used to be leased out years ago, but not as of current since, Turner Dirt wanted to run the ground and have stuff out there, but we used to lease all the farmland out. And then the hay is just done by a person that's just takes it and he keeps the hay himself. Just so that way we get it mowed, doesn't cost us anything and he gets something out of it.
It's not, it's not the ground like Pine Valley or out here. It's,
But that center
Stuff
of
on
the
it.
crack out there, that used to be all hayfield out there until they put rock in it. Then across the road used to be all hayfield before they used that for their racing and it used to be alfalfa out there.
okay. All right, yeah, so we've done that and bring us back any info and we've got a little bit of time yet. So,
It's not like there's a lease to expire.
yeah, well, yeah, there's not one to expire, so
No,
it would be good to contact.
and they have
Per
paid
camera.
they have paid the rent this year,
That's
correct?
correct.
Yes, they have issued us a check, so I mean, we have a rent check for this year, so there's no sense of urgency here, take our time, do it right. And we can.
Well, it is, unless he's gonna put on some type of fall fertilizer. I mean, Derek, can you contact Tom and, or, not Tom, Rick and March and just let them know that we're working on
Oh,
it?
sure.
Yeah, I would just, so that they're not,
To check with land conservation too, there's gotta be some average rent per acre in this county. At least find out what the average is.
Yeah. okay.
That's something extension might track actually.
Yep, they do statewide. All right, on to 17, we did 16. Discussion, possible action, development of code of conduct, 17.
Mike, this is all you.
Yeah, so you'll notice there was no additional material provided for this discussion. And that is because I'm referring back to the Langley County Board of Supervisors Code of Conduct that was provided last meeting, last meeting of materials, and I'll read them off to you. But to give you some context as to why I did that. I joke frequently, as I did with the lease, about, stealing things that exist already, partially because that's a monetary savings. You don't want to have to pay me to rewrite something that already exists. In this particular case, what is also important is the function of precedent in American jurisprudence. So part of the law is the stuff that's written on the books. But the reason that we have to go to school and the reason I make the big bucks is because there is a judicial interpretation of those laws that has taken place over the course of hundreds of years. And when I take an existing document or authority and repurpose it, especially in cases where there has already been some kind of judicial overview of that law, I can rest assured that the provisions of it have been tested against judicial review and prevailed. So in other words, not only do I know that they're legal according to the words themselves, I know that a judge has looked at it, said, seen a challenge to it as written, and said, no, these are good. You can keep going with them. Now, the reason I keep citing back to the Langley County Board of Supervisors Code of Conduct is because I believe it is as counterintuitive as it may seem, they are both broad and specific enough that I believe that they are enforceable. And then I also don't have to rely on belief because they were subjected to a lawsuit. A supervisor was disciplined due to a violation of them, took the matter to court, took it up to the Court of Appeals, and the Court of Appeals ruled in favor of the county. They adjudged that the process followed by the county was sufficient and that the rules themselves were not so overly broad as to be unconstitutional or unenforceable. So for those of you who do not have the search function to go back and look in last month's materials, the Code of Conduct, well, they're dubbed responsibilities of county board members, and that is 1, uphold the oath of office by faithfully and impartially discharging the duties of a county board supervisor to the best of their ability. 2, act in the best interests of county government by refraining from conduct which a reasonable person would deem unethical, offensive, or otherwise contrary to our community values or the oath of office. 3, be responsive to the needs of the community by being available to the public for questions and comments. 4, represent the interests of constituents by attending and participating in meetings, prepare for meetings by reviewing all information distributed to members in advance, observe the rules of decorum in meetings by employing a tone and demeanor during debate which is courteous and respectful of the views and interests of others, refrain from using language that is vulgar or threatening, refrain from engaging in personal attacks or otherwise introduce information that is irrelevant to the subject of the debate. 5, conduct government business in a manner that is open and accessible to the public. Refrain from discussions of government business with other board members outside of public meetings when such discussions are prohibited by law. Conduct meetings in open sessions unless there is a genuine need for closed session. And 6, follow applicable policies and procedures adopted by the county board. And then it goes through the process of enforcing the rules, which is similar to what's found in our current ethics ordinance. But basically, it holds a county board supervisor to a higher standard of conduct than an average citizen. So, for example, the supervisor who was disciplined due to this mocked someone with a disability. And that was a judge, that the county board ruled that, what's the term that they use? Offensive or otherwise contrary to their community values. So that would be a solidly First Amendment protected activity. I could, personally insult anyone in this room, and I'm free to do that under our Constitution. However, by the implementation of this code of conduct, that supervisor, because it was limited to the, I think, removal, and there were multiple violations of it. He didn't get removed just for that incident. But it allows for the board to decide that certain conduct is contrary to their community values. That's really one of those key things that I say is broad and specific. So what could be contrary to our community values encompasses a very broad range of conduct. If you walked out in Fifth Avenue and shot somebody, that would be opposed to at least my understanding of our community values. But it is specific in that it's not just any conduct. If you were to just walk out on Fifth Avenue, that's not contrary to our community values. And so my recommendation is simply to adopt the code of conduct as of the county board of Langlade. But I operate at the direction of this committee and others, and I would be happy to go further into my reasoning, hear any concerns or questions that there may be.
Mr. Carroll.
Can you speak to the the enforcement piece looks extremely general to me.
Yeah, so specific to the county of Langlade, and I'll just read them for those who don't have them accessible. For rules violations observed during a meeting, the presiding officer of the meeting shall have the authority to sanction members at the meeting or refer the matter to the county board chairman, vice, and second chairman for resolution. For rules violations that occur at all other times, any complaint shall be forwarded to the county board chairman, vice, and second vice, who shall then meet with the county board members who is the subject of the complaint, review the complaint, decide the merits of the complaint, and render a decision as to the appropriate remedy of any violation of these rules. The decision may be appealed to the full county board. So that's in opposition to the way that our system currently works, which is that somebody files a verified complaint. That complaint is provided to the respondent. And then there's a hearing held before the ethics board. And again, we're talking about the difference between the ethics ordinance and a code of conduct. But basically, this requires notice to the subject of the complaint against them. And then they meet with, in this case, their chair, vice chair, and second chair, which is the equivalent of a hearing. And then that decision can be appealed to the full board. That satisfies the due process requirements that would be inherent to the property interest of possessing a seat on the county board. So you're right, it is very general. It's not.
Appropriate remedy.
And that's another one where it's broad or specific. And I would fall back to our definitions in the ethics ordinance. So sanction, public or private censure, fines, forfeitures, or committee removal up to and including removal from the board. Again, I think that latter one would require a higher standard. And then as well, if that's your concern, we can simply define what appropriate remedies are. So we could go through our rules of the board and say violations of this rule shall be penalized at a rate of. And so certainly the enforcement part is something that I think really needs to be reflective of how the county board wants to police itself. But the things to be policed, we need to get on the books so that we can start making our definitions of what we consider to be community values.
Would this be a part of the board rules itself, or is this a separate document?
So my proposal is to make these part of the rules of the board. Again, to contrast them from the ethics ordinance also applies to employees of the county. This is specific to county board members. And I think the most appropriate document, the most appropriate authority for that is the rules of the board.
What is the ethics one called? Ethics ordinance?
Yeah.
This one's got department heads in it too, so are we thinking the same thing?
Department heads, I think, are more appropriately personnel actions to be undertaken by the administrator. I don't know whether or not Langlade has an administrator form of government.
It says
says
the
it
county
there.
administrator shall have leadership role.
Page 10.
I wanted to pull up our current ethics ordinance so I could see it.
If you go to the old rules and resolutions agenda website, former Supervisor Murphy Lopez had them placed on that. I don't know how easily.
But I guess I was thinking that we had somewhat similar language somewhere in there, but I can't remember.
Just search.
I'm trying.
Worth reference tonight.
Language similar to which part?
Code of conduct.
No. So during the implementation of the ethics ordinance, it actually, that was the origin of it. There was some conduct by a supervisor that was of concern. And so the origin of this discussion was to implement a code of conduct. However, through the development of the ethics ordinance, that actually got dropped. So everything in our ethics ordinance is pretty much already covered by state law.
Okay. And then I just flipped through this rule because I could have sworn we had somewhere in one of our documents something similar, but I guess we don't. Could you, I mean, I guess I would like to see it kind of drafted into our rules of the board and brought back along with the like enforcement, whatever you were speaking of.
Well,
I mean, do you
I
have
don't think
suggestions?
we
for
wanna
that?
go down that rabbit hole just now. Maybe we just get it started and see how it goes.
If it's passed and simply says appropriate remedies in the rules, that can be defined later on.
Right.
You mean, you're
So-
saying we would just put in the code of conduct part and then, okay, I mean,
Yeah,
Well, the enforcement also, but I'm just saying, I don't know that we have to get more specific at this point.
oh, okay, yeah.
So again, this body would have the authority to establish precedent, which I referenced earlier. So it could be that something happened, you implement an enforcement action, and because of this conduct, this person is subject to public censure. And then that sort of sets that precedent going forward. So if anybody looks back and says, what is an appropriate remedy for conduct A? Oh, well, 5 years ago that happened, and in response to conduct A, they implemented a public censure. So that's an appropriate remedy. Or you can go more formal and say, these specific actions or conduct result in this specific punishment, this specific remedy. Again, those are going to be easier to tie to like hard and fast rules of the board. But certainly we can brainstorm on that.
In last month's folder, you had a document that was, sorry, hold on.
the Lang Lake one?
Well, no, I looked at that one.
Yeah.
But the 12B, which said Crawford, Iowa, Sauk County ordinances, was that something that pertained to this? Did that have some of their?
So those were ethics ordinances.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe some of them
I'm
have.
just wondering if you could, for the next meeting, have the draft of our rules of the board document, but then maybe also have some information on I don't know, I guess I don't know if we want to go down this rabbit hole, but if we wanted to, if you didn't like the language of the enforcement, if you wanted to see, was there, I guess maybe some options for what kind of, I don't know how specific we would want to be on that.
The
I
only,
don't know enough about it. It would be nice to have other options, I guess.
the only additional specificity I would add is the same that's found in our ethics ordinance, where it lays out public or private censure, forfeiture, committee removal, because those are pretty much the universal remedies
Right.
available to a body policing itself. If I look for it, I can probably find, those are probably in Robert's rules somewhere. But those are the generally accepted
Right.
and
Said,
statutorily
it's
allowed.
stated in 17.2 of Lang Lake's policy. It says, depending on the severity of the
Oh,
rules
yeah.
violation,
Yeah.
sanctions may include private reprimand, public reprimand, removal from committee assignment, referral for criminal prosecution, payment of a forfeiture, and/or a request for removal from office. So that is outlined in 17.2 of Lang Lake's.
So if that's satisfactory, I would just
No, I see.
lump that in.
Yeah. I agree with Ingrid. Bring what.
That's enough for now, yeah.
We could, other questions I have, which we could discuss that at the next meeting, because I don't, got a lot here. But the language here on how the decision of a sanction is determined, I have some questions about that and what we would want.
We don't have a second vice chair.
Well, right, and like, are we really wanting to leave, or is that a function of our ethics? There's a lot of ways that could go.
Yeah,
So,
violations of this code could actually go to the, is that what, to the ethics committee?
right, the yet so far undetermined.
The interim.
Yes, so I think we would need to discuss that function too.
Since this is more, I guess you'd call it inward looking, I think this is a self-policing kind of function. I don't think this would shift to some ethics board that may not be board members.
I don't disagree, but then we would need to decide, okay, well, in this one, they have a chair, a vice, and a second chair that then just make a unilateral decision. Is that how we want that to look when we're doing self-policing, or do we want that to look something else? That would be my question.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Within our current rule structure, those decisions are made by the full county board.
That's what I
Isn't that
thought.
correct?
Isn't it a 3/4 vote too?
I don't know.
Well, for removal.
removal of this, but
Well, this-
for other actions, that would
This
be
is
a
from
full board action.
22, and this is how you remove vacancies. And it just says that removal caused by 2/3 vote of all supervisors. And then, of course, there's removal of cause per statute, section 17, 14, 2, related to evaluation, equalization, some tax thing. Death, of course, you remove then. Move out. But if you can move out of the county, but, you know, you can finish your term if you, moving out of the district, but you're still in the county, you can finish your term.
Oh, but can you?
That's not legal.
No, we had this
Well,
whole
that's what
discussion.
this.
Yeah, I know.
Telling you what the
For fun.
Oh, so
definition, what
the argument off the top of my head to something like this immediately going to the full board is that there is the potential for reputational harm. Even if this matter were discussed in closed session, that is, you know, compared to the 17 more people that know about what happened. So I do think some intermediate body would be appropriate. So if that's not just the chair, vice chair, and some other, maybe the chair of the ethics board could be the third part of that tribunal, or this committee, some other committee.
You could
zoning
create a committee. You could create a
Create a
committee that would be the, you know, the committee on committees could then make that assignment to whatever. I mean, or it could be.
I am not in favor of creating another committee when we always have to discuss the ethics.
But-
That's my personal opinion. I would personally like to discuss this further at the next time when we have the draft. Maybe we can.
I think this is.
See if you see anything in there.
I think with the whole county board needs to be involved in this type of what we want to do here. And this is more than just this committee having,
To update our rules, we would.
you know
have
what
to
I
work.
mean?
Instead of bringing it back next time, would we just have him send that to the county board? Or do you want us to actually look at the language before we move it on to them to
I
discuss?
think we can look at the language, but I think it has to, the full county board's got to understand what's going on here, right? Because that's why there's 21 of them. right?
I would agree, and I'm not arguing that. I just think when we have the amount of stuff that we have on our agendas, then it would be nice to at least come forward with some ideas for them then.
I
Like,
agree.
here's the language, here are some options for ways that this could go unless somebody
Don't
else.
disagree with that at all. I just, it needs to have more people involved in this stuff.
We can also, at next county board, relay that this discussion is happening and invite them to come to this committee and take part in those
It
conversations.
needs to be, everybody
Great.
needs to be involved in this. This is bigger than.
What we're talking about, please.
You got what you need?
I do.
Well, it's not just that, I mean, you talk about your rights and you look at the way the government, look at the federal government, the way they operate. You know, it's, I mean, it's reality. Gotta look at the way business is conducted and life's different than what it used to be. So I think it needs to be.
All right. Mike says he has enough information to bring it back next month, a little bit more to us. Derek, do you need anything out of this? Good?
No.
Which brings us right into number 18, meeting frequency. We're approaching 2 hours and 10 minutes. I think, go ahead.
I would have liked it last month, we would have just said, let's have 2 meetings this month. That would have been great.
Yeah.
So can we just, well,
No,
I don't know if it's too late now. I mean, is our future agendas for the rest of the year gonna look like this?
I would just make the motion, we can always cancel the meeting.
Yeah,
All
let's
right.
do that. Okay.
but all right, so
I
we're,
was waiting for you to make.
Fine, I'll make the motion. 2 meetings.
I'll second.
And wait, hold on.
I don't.
we gotta,
For the rest of this year,
I got mine.
or
Going forward, schedule 2 meetings a month, and then if not needed,
cancel
we
the
can
second one?
cancel the second one. This one's the normal one.
Okay, but what would be the other day of it then? That's the second part of it.
We can figure that out.
I'm pulling it up, our calendar here, I don't know.
Tell me when you want.
Okay, that's good. Well, so currently we have ours on the second Tuesday, right? And county board on the third Tuesday. So would we say fourth Tuesday?
Can we go on Wednesday?
No. Sure.
The only reason why I asked Wednesday, because I got sports on Tuesday.
I do
Thursday,
too, I do too, I'm already missing them all the time.
So Wednesday, they don't have.
It's your committee.
Chair,
It
vice
is
chair,
Thursday.
anything?
Tuesday and fourth Wednesday.
Wow, this one's got 5 Wednesdays in it.
Yeah, that's an oddity though.
Yeah.
Fourth Wednesday is what you're thinking?
Fourth Wednesday of every month is fair recycling and parks at 5 o'clock.
What about the fourth Monday?
Pine Valley.
Pine Valley.
Oh, and Jay's.
Pine Valley,
Sorry,
what
that
time?
Pine Valley's the third, never mind.
So Jay,
The
okay.
JAC's going quarterly.
Is
Oh, but
Yeah,
it's
but-
quarterly, and what time is there?
Is JAC fourth or last?
It's fourth Monday, 7 p.m., county boardroom.
Well, 7 p.m.
Glad that I.
We're done, if we start this one at 5, with the hopes of being
We
done
know
by
we're
then.
done.
Exactly.
It only lasts.
We are done.
There we go. I can add that in. The
Oh, yeah,
second meeting must end by 7.
yeah, we have to be everybody's
Being the second, well, you're gonna be meeting again in 2 weeks, so.
There shouldn't be enough on the agenda to make it, that's the whole point.
Well, like Mark said, if we don't need it,
yeah, it's, I
we don't.
mean, it's every 2 weeks.
Is that a
You're
possibility
meeting
then?
every 2 weeks anyway, right?
Fourth Monday at 5?
Yep.
Yep.
Whatever.
Well, we've got all the stuff coming up with the campus that will eventually come from one committee to here to there to ricochet around.
Yeah, we don't really have a set days right now for that, but.
Yeah.
Worry about that.
Let's bring a word around this.
Okay, so motion by Cooley, second by.
Last night,
In a half hour ago, she said she did not want any more committees or meetings.
She said no more committees, she didn't say no more meetings.
That's true. All right, you got that, Derek?
I have a first by Glassburner, second by Cooey to approve 2 meetings per month going forward, with the normal meeting being the second Tuesday at 5 p.m. and the second meeting being the fourth Monday at 5 p.m.
Any more discussion on that? Mr. Carroll, you're good with that? Fill your calendar right up. All those in favor of going to the second meeting on the fourth Monday of the month, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? All right.
you're opposed?
I didn't say anything. I just growled, I didn't.
I said wrong.
It's like sorting presents.
All right, we'll take a recess and then come back to closed session, 2 hours, and we can take water break, whatever you need.
Just clarify.
Who all got our committee and
Not
we need Mr.
unnecessary.
Jensen? No. Mike, you don't need to be, so. We need Mr. Wendell.
Been out of here 20 minutes.
All right. All right, stretch.
Okay, you're back in.
Mr. Kirk, recommendation?
We're looking for a motion to enter into closed session, correct?
Yes.
And we have 2 separate closed sessions on our agenda, so could we do one motion to accompany
Yes.
both of those?
Yep.
All right, so you're looking for a motion, Mr. Chair?
Motion to go into closed session. Mr. Cooley, seconded by Mr. Carroll. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Are we gonna exclude anyone?
Mr. Chair's discretion.
You are to be removed.
Well, it says here I don't have to.
That is from
What?
a,
I'm not even gonna ask you why.
I already
Just
told
read
you.
what I was told to do, and then it says to sit here, and then I can just take it up with the DA. How this is all coming
Yeah.
out.
Welcome to do that.
Yeah,
So I guess whatever you guys wanna do next, just do it, because the other board members told me I could
Mr.
sit
Carroll.
here.
I thought board rules said we're not supposed to have phones on in meetings.
We discussed that earlier.
yeah,
We did.
yeah, she's been already.
But only on a member of that committee,
No,
everyone.
it's to all board members.
By a state attorney at the senior center, correct? I mean,
Yeah,
what
she was
higher
giving-
authority can you-
I didn't see that, I read the rules that I got sent to me, and it says not to have your phone on in a meeting. Because everybody's got their phone, I'm looking at my phone, because this thing.
Doesn't say not to have them on, it says use of personal electronic devices, I believe is the phrase,
Yes.
is prohibited.
I was just reading that email.
So what do you think?
Well, we voted to go into closed session. We can't enter into that closed session with an unauthorized person in the room. So county attorney, what would be our appropriate?
We can all physically move elsewhere. that would be within the authority because we're discussing that possibility now in open session. The sheriff could be contacted to remove the unauthorized party. The motion to enter into closed session could be tabled to a later date or postponed to a later date.
Committee, what do you think?
Don't want to change it.
I have no idea how urgent the timing is for I don't even know what we're gonna be talking about.
And we do have the second meeting, so you don't know if it's, if it's something you want to be addressed before the next county board meeting.
But that won't solve a problem.
Well-
If the lady's trying to prove some kind of point, she'll just come to that meeting.
Right? I just don't know why,
You mentioned bringing it up with the DA. So if that's gonna be the bottom line here, if it doesn't matter what we do, if we postpone it, we're gonna have this discussion again.
Yeah.
Do you wanna just move forward to doing that?
I just don't understand why, if we're all working together for the county, why this is happening.
You call this working together?
I guess we are working together.
What do you think you will gain by staying in a closed session? What do you think?
To know what's going on so I can serve the county. I mean, I'm on the board, I got asked to do
You
this.
got 5 votes. 5 votes.
I only asked
Yes.
a few
Point of
people
order
to
here.
vote.
This discussion is not part of what we're considering. We
Yeah.
made a vote to go into closed session. We're trying to determine what route we're gonna take to get into that closed session. We're not debating the whys or wherefores of why a person's excluded. The decision's been made.
I think we contact the sheriff's department, so we put an end to this. So it just doesn't happen at another meeting.
Sounds good to me.
It's the call here.
Anyone can, it's technically, it would be at the chair's designation, so you can contact him or, I don't know.
No. Rings true. Hey, good evening, Steve Williamson upstairs in the county boardroom. Is there a deputy within the building? Anybody close? We need a person removed from the county boardroom. How far out are they, you think? How far out are they? Are they from the city? Roughly. Okay. All right, yeah, we'll wait. Thank you. Bye. Nobody close, but they're coming.
Question for Borough Council, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Should we be in recess while we're waiting, or do we just kind of hang in limbo here?
So a motion's been called to enter into the closed session, so unless there's further discussion on that motion, we could call recess.
I make a motion to recess.
Okay.
So such
We'll
time.
go into recess. Till
Second that.
They say how far out?
Gillingham or Lone Rock?
So
Yeah.
No, it's just ordered.
Yeah. We'll take a 20-minute recess, hopefully they'll be by then.
Yeah.
Preserve my laptop. Keeping this on there, but I think it's
You're
finally.
good?
Yeah.
All right. Returning from recess, I'm gonna entertain a motion to postpone this. Are we gonna call it postpone, David, or do we wanna just adjourn this?
You have to postpone the motion that's on the table,
Yeah.
and then you can do whatever you want.
I propose.
Postpone the motion that's on the table. We'll vote on postponement of the motion that's on the table. All those in favor, signify.
Second.
Man,
Yeah.
okay, is there a second?
Steve?
Yeah. Discussion.
Yes.
We're gonna postpone.
I thought
Till our
you
next
were
meeting.
Wanting to just get this done with.
We decided that the wait is, we've been here going on 3 hours, so.
Okay.
We got a meeting in 2 weeks, so.
Okay.
All those in favor of postponing till the next meeting, signify by saying aye. Aye. All right, I would entertain a motion to adjourn until the next meeting. Mr. Carroll?
Wait, hold on.
Oh, no, please.
You're missing a few things.
Open session correspondence. Any
No correspondence from your report.
future agenda items for the next meeting coming up? Yes.
And it's not an urgent one, so it doesn't have to be at the next meeting, but I just wanted to discuss the process that we have for, when we have like a resolution or even just any agenda item, I remember under Clint, we had requested or required that everyone always do an agenda item cover and then there'd be supporting documents, et cetera. I don't know where we're at on that, if that's a requirement or not, but I feel like there's a variation in who's bringing forward things and how it looks. Sometimes there's an agenda item cover, sometimes there's not, sometimes there's supporting documents, sometimes there's not. I would like to talk about streamlining it. For me, I would like to see as much documentation as possible in our packets prior to meetings. So anyways, I just thought we could discuss that process. If that would be okay.
Very viable. Any other agenda items, future agenda items? Good. All right, now, Mr. Manning. Second by Cool. All those in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.